She sat the Iron Throne for half a year. It cut her every time. The city she had fought to take began to rot beneath her. The treasury was empty. The allies she had trusted turned their dragons on a town that had done nothing wrong. And the people she was supposed to rule began to whisper a name she could not escape. Maegor with teats. That is what they called Rhaenyra Targaryen, the woman who won the throne and lost everything else. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Blood of the Dragon, Episode 8, The Dance of the Dragons, when everyone lost. By the time Rhaenyra entered King's Landing, the war had already taken more than any victory could repay. Her sons were dead, her allies were bleeding, and the crown she wore had been smuggled to her from a city that had already crowned someone else. But the gates opened. The gold cloaks turned. They had been demons' men from the start. Alicent had no army left inside the walls. And when Rhaenyra climbed the steps of the Iron Throne and sat down, the swords cut into her hands and legs. The throne that had tolerated her father for 26 years rejected her in an instant. She ruled King's Landing for 6 months. It should have been her triumph. Instead, it was a slow collapse. The treasury was gone. Tywin Lannister had divided it into 4 parts and hidden them across the realm before the city fell. Rhaenyra raised taxes. Bartimos Celtigar, her new master of coin, bled the merchants dry. The small folk who had opened their gates in hope began to starve in resentment. Then came the betrayal at Tumbleton. 2 of her dragonseeds, Hugh Hammer and Ulf the White, the men she had trusted with the mightiest dragons in the realm, turned their beasts on a town loyal to her cause. Vermithor and Silverwing burned Tumbleton to the ground. Buildings, markets, temples, people. After that, Rhaenyra trusted no one. She ordered the arrest of Adam Velaryon, the only loyal dragon seed. Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, the man who had risked everything for her claim, warned the boy and helped him escape. For that, she threw the old lord in a cell. One by one, the men who had believed in her cause began to turn away. And then Helaena died. Queen Helaena Targaryen, who had never wanted the war, who had been broken by the murder of her son, who had stopped speaking and stopped riding and stopped living in every way that mattered, threw herself from the window of Maegor's Holdfast onto the iron spikes below. She was 21. Some say Rhaenyra ordered it. Others say she simply stopped caring enough to prevent it. In either case, the people of King's Landing had loved Helaena. They had never loved Rhaenyra. And now a preacher called the Shepherd began to speak. He stood in the streets and called the dragons demons. He called Rhaenyra a tyrant. He called the Targaryens abominations who had brought their beasts from hell to enslave the people of Westeros. And the people listened because they were hungry and afraid, and no one in the Red Keep seemed to care. The mob found the Dragonpit. 5 dragons were chained inside. What happened next was the most extraordinary act of destruction the common people of Westeros ever committed. They stormed the Dragonpit. Thousands of them, armed with axes, spears, hammers, clubs. Some had nothing but their hands. They poured through the bronze doors and into the darkness where the dragons waited. The first was Shrykos. A man named Hob the Hewer drove an axe into her skull 7 times before she fell. Then Morghul, a man in armor already burning, ran at the dragon with a spear and drove it through the eye before the flames consumed him. Then Tyraxes, tangled in her own chains, overwhelmed by the sheer number of bodies climbing over her. Then Dreamfyre. She broke free of her chains, thrashing, screaming, burning everything around her. A crossbow bolt found her eye. She crashed into the great dome above, and the dome came down on top of everything, dragon and men alike, buried in stone and fire. And then Syrax, Rhaenyra's own dragon, the Queen's mount. She flew to the dragon pit and landed among the mob, perhaps to fight, perhaps to save her kin. But on the ground, a dragon is not what a dragon is in the sky. The small folk swarmed her, and Syrax fell. 5 dragons. one night. Killed not by armies, not by rival dragonlords, but by the people they were supposed to rule. Prince Joffrey, Rhaenyra's youngest son by Laenor, had tried to fly to the Dragonpit on Syrax before his mother could stop him. The dragon threw him from the saddle 200 feet above Flea Bottom. He was 15. Rhaenyra fled. She escaped through the Dragon Gate with a handful of guards and her youngest son, Aegon, a boy of 11 who had already seen more war than most men see in a lifetime. She rode to Rosby. They turned her away. She rode to Stokeworth. They refused her too. In the end, she sold her crown to buy passage on a ship. The woman who had fought a war for the Iron Throne pawned the symbol of it to pay for a boat. She sailed to Dragonstone, her home, the place where she had been crowned, where Daemon had placed her father's circlet on her head and called her queen. She did not know that Dragonstone had already fallen. The lord who held the castle for her had betrayed her, and waiting in the courtyard was Aegon, broken and burned, barely alive, propped in a litter, and beside him was Sunfyre, his dragon, golden and crippled, one wing shattered, but alive enough to do what was asked. Rhaenyra was dragged before her half-brother. Her son was made to watch, and Sunfyre ate her. The dragon took her in 6 bites. Some say she screamed until the 3rd. Some say she was silent from the start. The only thing the histories agree on is that Aegon the boy stood there and watched his mother disappear. He was 11 years old. Aegon II had won, but winning in this war meant nothing. His body was a ruin. The burns from Rook's Rest had never healed. His legs were shattered. His hip was broken. He could not walk. He could barely sit. Half his face was melted. He ruled from a litter, carried between rooms like cargo, and the lords who had crowned him were already planning his removal. When word came that Cregan Stark was marching south with a northern army to avenge Rhaenyra, Aegon II was found dead, poisoned. A cup of sweet arbor red, laced with something that left blood on his lips. The suspects were many: Corlys Velaryon, Larys Strong, the Masters. It did not matter who held the cup. What mattered was that the realm had decided the king must die so the killing could stop. Both claimants were now dead. Both factions had been broken. The dragons were nearly gone. And when Cregan Stark arrived in King's Landing with his cold northern justice, he found a city that had eaten itself alive. He served as hand for a single day. He held trials. He took confessions. He offered the condemned a choice between the block and the wall. 22 men chose the wall. 2 chose the block. Then he went home, and the Iron Throne passed to a boy of 11 who had watched his mother be devoured by a dragon and his father's cause collapse into ash. Aegon III, the boy who had seen everything, the king who would smile only once in his entire reign. So tell me this. In a war where both queens died, both kings fell, 5 dragons were killed by the people they ruled, and a child inherited the ashes. Was there ever a side worth choosing? Write it in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened next, when the last dragon died in chains, when magic left the world, and when a broken boy tried to rule a kingdom that no longer believed in anything, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Because next time, we meet the Dragonbane, the king who killed magic.